What's up, everybody? Sparewood again here from Sleepless Nights with another episode on Space Engineers Programming 101. So in the last episode, we were starting to work on trying to refine the OS to have better control over individual vents and oxygen tanks. Now, on that front, I have good news and I've got some bad news. The bad news is actually what this little guy is displaying right here, which I've been trying to isolate the tank property stockpile, and it has been a big problem. So what I did was I basically just did some sloppy coding to get the specific tank we have and this specific panel, make a list of the actions, make a list of the properties, and just print them all out onto a screen, and we get this. Now, this is actually quite informative, but it doesn't really help me that much, because what I really want is this stockpile property right there, because it's a Boolean value. Now, my theory is the stockpile actions turn it on and off, but the property is going to be, you can see on, off, show in terminal, show toolbar configuration, etc, etc, etc. So the stockpile property listed here is different than the actions. It's going to actually be the property here. We've got toggle block, show in terminal, toolbar configuration, show on HUD, and stockpile auto refill. Same order this is set up in. So the stockpile is what I really want to check for. The problem that I'm running into is there's no seemingly good way to check for it. And so that creates a bit of a problem that I'm not able to identify whether or not it's actually stockpiling, and thereby not really able to change what's going on. So the tank method is sort of on hold until I can figure out an actual way to configure it, so that it'll actually tell whether or not it's on stockpile or whether or not it's just being filled. Now, the good news is I fixed the vents. That's the good news. So, for example, we're on the tank setup now. There's another method that I would actually like to implement, but I haven't gotten around to doing that yet. And I believe I even forgot to turn on the cursor option yet again. I did. There we go. So now you should be able to see my mouse cursor. Yay! Alright. So we'll go into the oxygen status. We'll go up to tanks. You can see the power status is on, and it says it's being used. However, if we go... where did it go? To the tank. Oh, it is actually being used. Never mind. Wait a minute. Stockpile tanks will not be drained. Okay, that's set to off. So why are the lights on the tank blue? That's unexpected. Now it's on. Now they're blue. I know that it's not being pulled because the vent is full, but I would think the lights would at least change. Interesting. Alright. This gives me an idea I want to try. Real quick, hopefully. Let's just place another one. Now this one is tank 6, and it is definitely not set up to stockpile. So what I want to do is change this to 6, because what I would actually like to do is there was a theory I was running with recently. Let's go ahead and put a couple spaces there, and then we'll add in... we've already got our action list, but what I want to do is tank get action with name stockpile. Or wait, no. I might be able to... well, let's try this first. Is enabled we're going to apply this to tank. We're going to do a toString just in case it doesn't return the right value. And see if... oh, wait, what was that? Oh, get actions with name. Or maybe it's action. There we go. Okay. I'm getting a little bit better at some of the inner workings of the structure. Ah, crap, it is set to true. So, I was trying to use some of these methods like get actions, get property, etc. And I might do that real quick here, but I want to try something else. Called a hash code, because I can't quite identify... maybe I don't need that, actually. I can't quite identify, really? Get? Is it a get hash code? Whether or not some of this stuff is the ID of the property, aka the name, or whether it's actually the value. Okay, so it's the... wait. 2986... I think that's just the property name in the hash code. Yeah. Crap. Alright, well, so like I said, I can't seem to access this stockpile. Now, some of you might be wondering why don't you just use the, you know, where'd it go? iTerminal property. The problem is there seems to be, and I'll show this in Visual Studios in a minute, there seems to be no way to access the property's value. Like it's just, yep, here it is, here's the ID, here's the name, here's the type, but I can't ever access, is it true, is it false? Every time I try and cast it into a boolean or throw it in an if statement, it always returns an error that it can't do that with an iTerminal property. So the iTerminal properties at this point are relatively useless to me. If you guys know of a way, if you've done stuff like this before, and you know of a way to actually access the property and get to the value, do let me know, because that would probably fix this whole system. So on that note, we're going to leave tanks alone for a while. I think the tanks are kind of stuck at the moment for what I want to do with them. Now, as for vents, however, we do have the vents set up. So, obviously we can turn them on and off. And we can see that now it's red. And from this point, it is pressurized. So there's that. Actually, you know what? I might... never mind. I might use it from this setup for a second. So we have it pressurized. So now all we need to do is select that, move that so you can see it. Oh, it's pressurized because the tank isn't going anywhere. But you can see the lights turn blue. So it will... it's set to depressurize, but it hasn't actually depressurized. So... actually, this is kind of a funny story. The only problem that I had in my code from the last episode, from the vent point of view, where's vents? Vents, is right... oh, third layer, here we go. Is right here. Before... there was an extra semicolon, and so this whole line was not functioning properly. I took that out, redid the code, now the vents will depressurize when they need to. Now the difference is the vents actually have what is it? Wait a minute. I thought they changed... hold on. I thought they changed their value. Like there was something in the detailed info that would say like filled in or blah blah blah. Where are those methods? They're in here somewhere. I should be doing this in Visual Studios, but I kind of just want to get an idea. So, vent controls pressure status. Oh, that's what it is. Vents actually have a method, can pressurize. And if it can, then it's pressurized. If it can't, it's depressurized. So that's where, because to show you an example, at the moment, oh, how good am I? Doing stuff blind. So at the moment, it still says pressurized, even though the thing is blue. Now, that's up to you guys. Let me know if you would rather it say something else, like, you know, queued to depressurize or something. I don't know. Because you can tell it's not actually noticing a difference. Now, if I remove this, you'll see all the air goes whoop. Now, if we move this around, now it actually says depressurized. So it is actually accurately assessing things. Now, it'll still say... Yeah, it still says pressurized now because it can pressurize. So that's a little... little not the way I want it to work, actually. The problem, really the biggest problem, is that the system on the internal engine of the game doesn't really make it easy to figure out what the oxygen system is. Now, granted, these are some of the newer blocks. Some of these other ones have been around for a while, and Keen has kind of adjusted them as they've gone. But these two in particular really do not lend themselves very well to, like tanks not having a stockpile indicator, or at least one that's accessible. Vents not having a depressurized flag to where it's like you're set to depressurize even though it's not. Like, they really need to either change some of the detailed info so that it will include some of that information, or just open up some of the flags, like make the stockpile property more readily available and stuff like that. That's my opinion on it. So there's a couple things that I want to work on. Outside of this, I wanted to give you guys that quick update on where we stand with our oxygen stuff. However, there's one method in particular that I want to add that will make things easier going forward, and then we might do some tweaking on, like, text formatting or something of that nature. Let me actually check out. I haven't looked at really what we could do with our, like, inventory and stuff like that. I think those are all fine. Power, I think, is fine. Solar, don't see a problem. Uranium, I need to move the reactor to have the little tab. It's like right up against the wall, so that's something we need to change. Jump drive, we should probably add a clause to where if jump drive is null, because you can see I've cleaned up the world space a little bit, so there's that. And this, I think, is okay. I don't really see the need to change any of this. Yeah, all that looks fine. So it's pretty much just the inventory that if we were going to change the... This just... I'm not happy with this, but I have to also take into account other screens. So we might actually try this script on a couple other screens, and that's the other thing I want to do, is try some multiple screen setups and see if we can figure out a way to get that to work as well. Now wait a minute. That one looks a little bit better, but I need to remove a few spaces on the side so that it's not running off the edge. Just some stuff like that. We need to just kind of clean up and add some artsy type stuff to some of these scripts. So let's tab over to Visual Studios and continue from there. Alright, so we are over here in Visual Studios now. Real quick, I wanted to show off a couple of things that I was trying so that you can see what I was talking about earlier. So I have a iTerminal property set up here, and it's get property stockpile, because I was playing around with ways to identify this, and if we do like this, you can look at all they have available. There's an as, which is supposed to, quote unquote, cast the variable as something else. But at least with this particular property, I have not been able to get it to work at all. As float cast equals is supposed to compare it to another object, but that doesn't really help us. You saw the get hash code. It serves as a hash function for a particular type. That's why I was wondering if maybe the value of the hash code would change if it was true or false, because stockpile is seen as a Boolean. Didn't work. ID is where you get stockpile. Type name is where you find out it's a Boolean. So, you know, it's got different functions, but there's no just accessible value, like just what is this equal. And you could even do stuff like, for example, we could make an if statement and say, you know, if, and I had it for stockpile SP, and it'll say cannot implicitly convert the property to a bool. I'm like, okay, well, can we equal true? Nope, can't convert it to a bool. And then I was like, well, it has those functions, so let's do as bool. That's perfect. Cannot convert to a bool. And I'm like, so why is this even here if it can't be converted into whatever you're casting it as? So I don't know how to properly use it for comparing. That's the problem. There's no value, there's no, like, I thought I saw something about get value, but it doesn't return. No, there's no get value. Nope. So I don't know. I don't know how that's actually useful for anything. Again, if you know, I'm not saying I'm an expert on any of this stuff, so if you know, let me know. Because that could help fix the individual tank controls. And we can see here the vent can fill room with air true, room is airtight false, blah blah blah. So this isn't exactly what we really need. We really need something that says like, you know, set to be depressurized or something like that. And things of that nature. But again, much like with the tanks, there really just isn't a good method for finding out whether or not it's going to be... you can get the oxygen level on both of these objects right here, oxygen level in the room, but again, that doesn't really tell you... So here's what I mean. For example, if we tell it up here in the update selection, if we scroll down here, I really wish there was a way to compact this a little bit, but I don't really know how to do it without breaking it. So if we set here, apply action depressurize, okay? We set that and we say apply it. But as you saw, the lights turn blue, but the room's full because the tank's full, so there's nowhere for the oxygen to go. So the oxygen is still in the room, it's not being sucked into the tank because the tank's already full, yet it's flagged to depressurize. So here's the problem. If we check can pressurize, then the room is airtight. Or fill room with air. Yeah, so it would come back as pressurized, not depressurized, even though it's flagged to be depressurized. We could even make an if statement on get oxygen level, but it's going to return 100% because the room is still full of air. So there's really no good check to find out if it's being flagged to depressurize or not. The only thing you can really do is check and basically run your behavior based on the oxygen that's in the room right now. That's my big issue with the vents in the tanks. I feel that they need to, in a future patch, add a method or even just a viewable Boolean value for both vents and tanks to see if they're flagged to depressurize, like the lights are blue but it's not going anywhere, or and with tanks that it needs to be able to tell you whether or not it's in the stockpile mode, because otherwise you don't really know what to do with it. Like, we've got it set up to where clicking on them will call those functions. If you say I want to apply the action to stockpile, when I click on this, it'll do it, but then our indicators don't change because the conditions haven't changed. So in that regard, both of these are a little bit broken, but I can't really make them work anymore any better than I already have, based on what I know about how the engine works and what we have access to is the bigger thing. Because there's a lot of methods that you can see here in Visual Studios, but they're closed off to the programmable block so that you can't break the game, basically. Such like iMyEntity and stuff like that. It has a really cool function called components, which is going to tell you what components are built into the block. I've always wanted to use that to be able to give you a summary of a blueprint and show how much of each part is required to build the ship, and you could do a part summary. That would be really cool, but you can't access iMyEntity through the programmable block, so there's no way to do that. You would have to do it outside of the game, like in something like SE Toolbox or something like that, and actually add up the cost of each part, and you'd have to calculate it manually, essentially. I wanted to write a script where it could calculate the components of each block, and then basically just feed it back to you on an LCD display or whatever, so you can hit run, and now you know what parts you need to build your ship. I thought that would be really cool. And it will work here in Visual Studios. You can do something with iMyEntity classes and continue, but then when you run it in the game, in the programmable block, it'll throw you a flag every time saying that entity can't be accessed. And that was done so that you can't break the game, but again, you could expose the components as a read-only value just to be able to see it without actually breaking anything in the game, kind of thing, to where it wouldn't affect anything as far as making that one thing available. Or at least I don't think so. I haven't actually dug into the engine and seen if there would be any problems with that. Anyways, having said that, I'm basically saying all that to give you my reasons on why the oxygen controls for the tanks and the vents are kind of at a standstill. But one thing I noticed in trying to play around with these is I have no good way of actually showing when new blocks happen or are placed, because we're not using timer blocks to update. It's based on controller input. So if you don't push any buttons, the screen never updates. Now, we might fix that in a future update. I don't know, because it may conflict with the inputs on controls. I'm not really sure on that. But and I've also thought about possibly setting it up to where there's if there's no input, then instead of update selection, then convert to timer block update and do something in that regard. I just haven't implemented it yet. I haven't really worked on it. For this, temporarily, let's go ahead and set up if jump drives dot count is less than or equal to 0. Because count should at least say 0, but I also don't know if it returns. I also don't know if it returns with a -1 if it's empty, or if it returns with a 0 if it's empty. So I just decided I'll do less than or equal to 0. The other thing we could do, because it is a brand new list, is say or jump drives is equal to null. And that way we're kind of covered either way. But we'll say main display, right, public, and let's do 1, 2, 3 for our spacing. No jump drives found. There. That will give us a contingency. And then this part will do an else. And we should probably implement that into all of these systems. Quite frankly, I just didn't take the time to do it. I was in a hurry getting the functionality to work, that I didn't actually end up planning out the fail-safes, if you will. We're still not really doing a whole lot with the jump drives yet. I'm still experimenting with them and learning what all different details and functions and methods and all that kind of stuff I can actually do with them, and things we may want to do with them. And if you have ideas for jump drives, things that you want to see happen, feel free to let me know. As far as if, oh, I've always wanted a way to, you know, fire it from a menu or adjust the distance from a menu, whatever. Just let me know. And in this part, we need to space this. So 1, 2, 3. Wait a minute. This is within the if block. If contains uranium. Here we go. So let's do. Wait, where's the name? Where did I put the name in? Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3, and then add that. So that will give us spacing there. I don't see any new lines, so that's all part of the same thing. Okay, so that should fix the uranium issues we were having, so that everything looks formatted. I'm still working out, trying to identify what I would really like to do is, instead of like this where you're just adding a random amount of dashes, I would really like a way to basically figure out the width of whatever text panel you're using. I haven't really been able to do that yet because it just hasn't come up really. I haven't really experimented with it to identify if there's a way to do that or not. Now, we do have a bit of an issue. I've kind of wanted to set up for a while. Oh, sorry, hold on. I'm getting a little distracted here from what I originally intended to do. Startup. Alright. So first run will reinstantiate all of this stuff. And then first run is equal to false. So, what I want to do is I want to add another main menu. And I may add... No, I'm not going to. I was thinking I might add a new line in this so that it's like further down, but I don't want to screw up any of the stuff we've done. So we're going to call this reset or restart OS. And what this is going to do is then when you add new blocks, you can call this method and then it will actually restart the thing. Not unlike when we go in and check the code and then remember and then run it again. That basically forces it to recompile. So let's see, we don't need all that. It's going to be under update selection, under main, inventory menu. Here we go. So let's add here. We're going to say case 4. And we don't actually need to change the current menu because we want it to revert right back to main. So not a big deal there. What's going to happen though... So what's actually happening here in, not startup, in the main, if it's not running startup, all it's running is update selection and update displays. Update displays, all it runs is right menu, and then the right menu writes it all out. So what's basically going to happen here is it's going to reach this point, and what we're going to do is say first run equals true. Okay, and then break. And so all that does is you're not going to go into any of these menus. You just clicked on first run, right? So, or I mean reset. So all that's going to do is toggle first run to true, which recalls startup the next time the thing runs. So all you have left in your run is to update the displays, which writes the menus. So you just see this stuff. So in a blink of an eye, it's going to roll through all that, then it's going to come back again and go, oh, first run is true, so redo startup, which is basically going to go through and reinstantiate all of these things. So if you have new blocks, it's going to look for, it's going to repopulate the lists, thereby giving you a whole new instance of the menu, basically. So that's a really simple fix. And that way, when you add new blocks, especially for me while I'm testing, when I add new blocks, I don't have to keep going back and forth and compiling the code, rerunning it again, all that stuff. I can just hit reset, and then it just should, in theory, have all new stuff. So that's good. Now, what I started to talk about was I've always had the idea to have this run with multiple displays. Okay? But, however, after looking at this, I've never really coded it that way, because we're looking for something that contains main. And so that's a bit of a problem, because we only have one display set up. So what that means is we've got to set up we've got to reconfigure our displays slightly. Now. At the moment, all of our code is designed to write to main display, so even if we add a list of displays, technically they won't do anything yet because we've never written the code in a loop format to display on all screens. This is both good and bad because it doesn't exactly do anything by adding a list, it just gives us options. So what I'm going to do, where's my displays settings? Displays, here we go. So we have main display, and I think I'm going to keep this, but what I'm going to do is add a list. I almost said Lisp for some reason. I'm going to add a Lisp to the menu. No, that's not what, no. And we're going to call this, I don't want to use panels because I tend to use panels for solar panels. Actually, did I? I don't think I made a list of solar panels anywhere. Interesting. Let's see. We'll call this displays. That'll be easiest. And then we'll bring this in as a new list of text panels. No big deal. Now the scrolling and stuff, I don't know how all this is gonna work, because we're basically adding a big component to, you know, a thing that was otherwise not normally involved. Now, you are still going to have to add them to the OS group. So if you want a display to be part of the OS, to display part of the operating system, it has to be added to the OS group. That's important because if you just I'm keeping it that way because that way you can just add LCD displays everywhere and not have them attached to the script if you don't want it. If you do, you add them to the group. Simple. I think what I'm going to do here, though, is it's going to loop through anything in the group and say if it contains main, like your main display, then it's going to add it to the main display, but otherwise it already is checked for text, so we're just going to add the current block to the display list. Sorry. Will that work? Or wait, no, as I might have to cast it. Will that work? There we go. Perfect. So now what we have is a list of displays. Now, right menu display. I think I'm actually going to change this method to write let's see. Update displays, right menu display. So what we'll change this to is right main display. Okay? Now, the main display is where you're going to work with the actual inputs. The next thing I want to do is write, let's do this way. Inventory display, displays, put it that way. Write, we'll call this engineering. Well, no, not engineering. Let's do refinery displays. And you'll see kind of a method to my madness here in a second. I don't know why that's capitalized. Write power displays and write oxygen displays. And as we get new menus and stuff like that, we'll continue this kind of pattern. Before we get into the inventory methods, let's actually add a comment here. So that's inventory methods, and we're going to call this section display methods. That way we can kind of compartmentalize. And actually, you know what? This has always kind of bothered me. This gets called first, so let's move that up there and then write our sub categories. And I'm going to leave this one expanded, and we're going to copy these because I'm going to essentially copy some of this stuff. Right? Okay. And believe me, there is a relative method to my madness. We'll do void. I don't really know why the semicolon is working. It shouldn't, because these are actual methods now. But whatever. Okay, so what I'm doing is I have an idea here that I want to endeavor to make happen, and that is you can title the kinds of displays that you want throughout your ship or station, and then it will basically, these will be read-only displays, in essence, is the idea. Now, again, how this will work with inventory or methods or menus where you're scrolling, don't really know, to be quite honest. But what we're going to do is basic status information on some of these other displays. So, to start things off, we're going to need the same for loop idea for everything. So we're going to loop through int I equals 0, I is less than displays.count, I plus plus. And in here, we're going to say if we're actually going to copy what's up here in the display section. So block definition, custom name, toString contains. Okay. We already know that they're text menus, so we don't really need to worry about that. So we'll say if displays at I not block definition, just custom name should be fine because we don't need to know what they are. Contains and that will loop through pretty much all of our displays and look for ones that have specific titles in their custom name. So actually again, we should probably put this inside a check and say displays.count is less than or equal to 0, or is actually, we'll do a reverse, greater than 0 and not equal to null. And in that case, we'll do all this stuff. And we just won't have an else clause for this at the moment, because there really is no other options. If it's not, then we're not even like writing to another display, because these displays don't exist. So it won't really matter. So for the first one, we're going to say inventory. So that has to be in the name of the LCD panel somewhere. This will say refinery, and this is all subject to be changed if general consensus is if everybody's like, well, I would rather it say O2 or something instead of oxygen. Well, you know, whatever, we can do that too. Actually, this one I may change to O2 because that's just a little shorter. Alright, so now we have all of our conditions to where it's only going to do what it needs. And the other thing that we're going to add in here is the update methods. So show public text on screen and the update. Update visual. And these will be in every loop as well. And now we're getting into the specifics where we can actually do some different stuff. So, and updates text. And again, that's just kind of in the bottom of every check, just like this one down here. Well, we'll copy this one actually. Keep the consensus the same. There we go. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we need to find the ones that we're going to actually use. We don't need main, because main's, well, main. But what we need is, let's do, for inventory, and see, there's a couple different ways we could do this. We could actually do the same type of switch case where it actually checks for the main menu, but this would be kind of interesting because we don't really need it to do that. All we really need it to do, even if you're on the main menu, because the thing I'm thinking is, if we did it that way where it checks the menu status or the current menu state, then if we did that, when we actually ran the thing, if you're running this on a multiple person ship, just for example, you know, you're up there derping around on the main menu, or any of the other sub menus, not looking at your inventory or something, all the inventory menus will just be blank. So, I mean, all the screens. So if we just have it set to call a certain thing, I know what we can do. We can actually set this up as an if statement. So, I'm pasting this in here. It's not going to work, but don't worry about it. So what we'll do, we'll do a switch case, actually, for, what did I have it on? Current menu? Yeah, current menu. That's good. That's a global. We can do that. Current menu. And we'll go ahead and actually just paste this stuff in here. And that should load just fine. And what I'm going to do here, or wait, did I? That is for this one, okay. Well, might as well put it in there. And then we can clear that. And what I'll actually do is make a default case, which, if you're not familiar with cases, there is a default case, and that's basically like saying, It's the equivalent of going if, else. Basically, the default case is essentially where you can do, if none of these are true, then default. So what we'll do here is, for now, total inventory summary. So, wait a minute. Syntax error. Why is it expecting a parentheses? It should be a... Wait, I don't think it's... Hold on a minute. I haven't done these in a while. Let me look up the syntax for this, because I think it's seeing default as a default data type and not what I'm intending it to. Alright, found it, fixed it, no big deal. Turns out you don't use a case. You just put default, and then it knows what it's doing. So, this actually lets us set up, if the current menu is set to this, then this is what it does. Otherwise, it's just going to default to, yeah, the total inventory summary. So that's relatively easy to set up. So what we're going to do is kind of copy the same idea through here. We don't need that. And we'll start off with a default case for each one. So for refineries, we'll do where's all my refinery stuff? Refinery status. There we go. And let's just go ahead and copy this. There's no real need to do it every time. That's for power, and this one's for oxygen. I'm pretty sure we have a power status function or method. And O2 status? Yes, sweet. Alright, so that's the default. And again, let me know what you guys think. If you don't think these should be interchangeable and they should just display a certain thing, that's perfectly fine. I'm not going to give the controls. You're not going to be able to control that. Blah, 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 blah. We can copy... Actually, for stuff like oxygen, we should probably... Oh, I know what we can do. Custom string is working. I'm hesitant to use these because it would involve bringing in input, and I'm just not comfortable with that because we don't have it set up to where these other screens can take an input or have access to the main menu. Because the big thing here is we can't change the selected menu item, so it would just be highlighted on the vent controls or whatever. So I think O2 status is better. We'll copy these three status ones because you may want them set up to where I'm trying to think of different ways that these could be used, but you may want them set up to where you can have screens set up just for solar panels, just for uranium, I don't know. So I'm trying to kind of leave this in here to where you could add other if statements to separate it if you wanted. As for oxygen, I'm almost thinking of just leaving this as an O2 status screen. Because, well, we'll leave it this way for now. Because that way it's going to default to this anyway, so it won't be a big deal. Refineries, again, I don't think there's a whole lot of controls for refineries. It's just show all. So we'll just add these in here just in case you want to have them set up a little differently. But I don't think the enable disable is necessary. So yeah, that should give us a multiple screen setup for now. Again, there's not a whole lot of controls. They're basically like branches instead of actual other stuff, like other controls or controlling it from another area. So let's tab back over to Space Engineers and see if all this stuff actually works the way we really want it to. Okay, so here we are back in the game, and you can see from the Restart OS option on the bottom that we have our newer code involved. Now this will actually be kind of a two birds one stone setup, because I can test the restart while also testing the other menus all at one time. Since this is such a big screen, I'm going to go ahead and put some of these in front. So that's inventory, refinery, power, oxygen. And I forgot the last time that I was in here, we had run the script and we went to minimal power. So at least that works. Alright, so I can get out of here. Alright, cool. So, what we need to do is change this to... just for testing's sake, we're just going to throw this in here. Oops. Spelling is important. Inventory. We'll add all that in a second. Inventory, refinery, power, and O2. Alright, now what we need to do is click on the OS and then grab all of these and save it to the OS group. So now those should be in the OS group. Sweet. Alright, now moment of truth. These... Ooh, what happened? Why is my screen offline? Well, it was going to be the moment of truth for the restart option. We might have to do that a little differently. Well, hold on a minute. Why is this writing it to here? Total inventory... Wow! It's writing all of it to the main display, not these. Huh. Now that's interesting. I wasn't expecting that at all. So if custom name toString contains main, it goes to the main display block. Otherwise, it's added to the group. Okay. They're part of the OS. They don't contain main, so they should all be in separate groups. You gotta get through this huge update selection method. Main display is all we're writing to here. Under write main display, switch current. Oh, I'm a knucklehead. I am such a knucklehead. I know what I did. I left them all because I cut and pasted them. So I left all of these as displays for main display. That's not going to... And all of these... Oh gosh, all of these are set up for main display. That's... all these methods are set up for displays. Ah, I did not think of that. I did not think of that at all. Well, sorta kinda worked. So we have the right idea here. It's just that these methods aren't set up to handle a different block. Well, I think the easiest way to fix that is to pass in a method. A screen. I'm just not entirely sure how broken that'll make anything. Let's try it on one. Let's try it with individual, because this one's already set up to do pretty easily. We'll say my text panel display. And let's copy this, and then we can basically just switch this out. Now, what that means is that on both this method up here, we're going to need to throw displays at I into this, and up here in this version, we'll have to pass in the main display. I think that will work. It compiled right. That's good. Okay, so the total inventory summary is still being displayed. And then if we go individual, which is the one we just changed, aha! Success! It shows up over here and over here. Now this actually shows an interesting tidbit as well. It looks like the characters seem to be perfectly fine. In terms of, well, no, never mind. I take that completely back. Don't listen to that at all. Because you can see there's very little space over here and there's a lot of space over here. So I don't know what I'm talking about. Leave that. I was thinking font size. The font size changes. Now, if we were to scroll down, does it scroll down on the other screen as well? No. Okay. So this one will not scroll at the moment. This one will. So, not a terrible fix for things, actually. The big problem... Actually, what I'm going to do... I know there's... Well, no, I don't really want to do that. I was going to just switch back over to Visual Studios for a second. Actually, let me go ahead and do that. And then we'll wrap this episode up. Alright, so we're back over here in Visual Studios. I already took the liberty of finishing off the power one right here, power status, added in the display, and changed this out. So that's all we're really going to be doing for these methods here. Is kind of the same idea. I think that's all there is in this one, is just 2 calls, so that's fine. Uranium, we'll go ahead and add this one. And let's highlight main. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 calls to this. And you could do a simple find and replace, but I'm always leery of doing that because when you do that, it might replace things that you don't want replaced in different areas, as far as like you know, just other stuff, other areas of the methods that you weren't expecting. I think I did this all in one. Yeah, I think that was all one. Same here. That works. I like that. I like those ones where all I did was put it in at the end. Makes it very easy to replace. Okay. And I'm just adding all these in case I end up changing them at some point to where they are utilized on other of the multiple screens and things like that. I won't have to go back and change all of them again. And it makes it easier because all we really have to do is pass it in from the main method. So it's really not that big of a deal. It'll work the same way for the main display, it's just it allows us to work with other displays as well if we want to. And was that all there was on this one? Yeah, I think so. Okay, display all inventories. Easy peasy. This one I think I did the same way where it ends. It does it at the end, looks like. And looks like the same thing here. I did change this one already, but I didn't do it in the Visual Studio project. I did it in the game just to test it. And now for this part, we have to go in and add the displays that we're currently using to these sections. So we might as well copy this. Or wait, yeah, there we go. Plural. Oops. There we go. Problem solved. Okay, same thing here. Pretty much just on all of them. We just have to go through and add all of the calls now because now they actually accept some kind of argument. So we have to make sure that we add all that in. This is the right public display. Or right main display. So this one we want to tread through a little carefully because we don't want to replace this. We want to add the method ones on the ones where it's actually calling the method, not the ones where it's writing it out manually. So that's another one of those. You need to be careful about which lines you change. And one more there. And one more there, and one more there. So, I'm pretty sure... I was hoping I'd have an error list down here where I could see if there were any errors. I don't see any, though. I don't think it'll be a problem. I don't think the update selection actually calls any of those methods, but let's scroll through it just to make sure. Push come to shove, if it does, we can always just pass in main as the default. But I don't think it actually does. Alright, so we should be good to go now for multiple screens. Let's tab back over one last time and see if this actually works. Alright, one last time, back over here. I've already pasted the code in, but I have yet to run it, so we're going to run it. And voila! So we have one refinery status. We're showing by default the total inventory, the minimum power display. Now we didn't get all the title bars and stuff, so we might have to fix that at some point. And we have our basic oxygen display. Now granted, again, can't scroll on these, but it's still kind of the framework for letting you have multiple displays running while running the system. Now... one other thing, it's defaulting to total inventory, refinery status, power status, and oxygen status. So let's tab through some of these real quick and see if anything changes. Oh crap. Ha ha ha. Alright, so that's a problem I'll have to fix. It's not clearing after each call. Or before it updates, so we'll have to fix that. We can probably fix it real quick. It would be a simple method once we get to those. Power. Right power display, here we go. So inventory is the first one. So before we enter the switch case, all we would have to do is say displays at I write public text blank, and for this part we can say false for not appending, because it's just basically going to overwrite whatever was there before. Not a big deal. I think this should work. Compiles correctly. Alright, so you'll notice it's clear. Now, let's see if that happens again. No. Sweet. Alright, so we didn't do anything else with power, but if we go to solar. Alright, so that screen... Ow, that's so cool! So it defaults back to power status, but if we go to any of the other ones, it'll switch to that too. So that's pretty cool. Let's try inventory. I can't see the inventory one from here. But it did in fact change. And then if we hit the back button, it will go back to the total inventory. So that's pretty awesome. We have a... It's not the best as far as we can iron out exactly what we want on each feature for display screens, not control screens type of thing. But I think that's pretty cool. And you'll notice this one is unaffected, so the operating system group works well. So yeah, I think we're going to wrap things up for this episode with multi-screen functionality. I think that'll do it for this episode. In the meantime, I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, leave a like, and I will see you all next time. Peace.